Hello and welcome to another edition of the incredibly, creatively, and appropriately named Query and Schultz program. My name is Jake Query. This is Derek Schultz. What are you, like catatonic over there?
Why do you always comment on how
you look hip? I mean, you're like hypnotized.
I'm smiling at our millions of viewers at home.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. I'm in a good mood.
Well, you're in a good mood, but that is, there's so much to talk about over the course of today. And by the way, brought to you by WGU Indiana is this program, Query and Schultz here on the ISC Sports Network. Just remember that when it comes to whether you want to continue your education, maybe you already have a degree and you'd like to pursue something new, WGU Indiana is Indiana's online accredited university, and the website, of course, as always, is indiana.wgu.edu. Ambition never rests. And Derek, when it comes to talk about, and we'll talk more about WGU coming up in the program, but when it comes to the NFL, the conversation never rests in the offseason. And unfortunately for Colts fans, the offseason is here, but that's not to say that the talk about the Colts and the speculation, that just now begins.
Yeah, and all the stuff that we've kind of alluded to over the last couple of weeks and months, notably the quarterback situation, now all of that clearly is going to ramp up because there are no games to actually talk about. But, the reason that I say that I'm in a good mood, Jake, is because I think when you take some time to calm yourself down after a team season ends, you start to reflect and look back on the season as a whole. And I think this season as a whole for the Colts was a positive step forward for the franchise. I thought it was really important for them to get back to the playoffs without Peyton Manning and without Andrew Luck, something that they haven't done since, the Jim Harbaugh days. They were competitive against Buffalo. In fact, and we'll get all into this, they outplayed Buffalo. They were the better team on Saturday. I don't think that they're a better team than Buffalo, but on Saturday in that game, they were the better team. And I think that's what makes the loss frustrating. But I'm trying to separate the loss from the season. I'm frustrated and upset about the loss, but the season in general, I think, really overshot my expectations.
When you look, for example, the Cleveland Browns go and, they blow Pittsburgh out of Heinz Field to get their first playoff win in a quarter century. And what a storyline that is. And you see, Browns fans, Cleveland's up 56-0 in the first quarter, and Browns fans are, I don't know. I don't
Hold on here, guys.
And that goes to show you, Derek, just how fortunate the Colts franchise has been for the course of winning a playoff game or getting into the playoffs in Indianapolis has become an inherent right year in and year out. And I think that we have forgotten just how difficult it is to sustain. I mean, this is a franchise that people here are very fortunate to have one that, and I'm not saying that to sit here and kiss up to the Colts, but I think that we forget just how difficult it is to be able to sustain year in and year out the competitiveness just to get to the playoffs, let alone win a playoff game. But as often is the case, when a team loses and ends their season, usually the game where they lose is a microcosm of the season in general. And the things that over the course of a season that have snake-bitten a team or nipped at a team all come up and rear their ugly head, and that's why a season comes to an end. In the case of the Colts, I agree with you. I think that they, for the most part, for the better part of it, were the better team on the field against Buffalo. There were a few things that came into play. And one of them is, quite frankly, I did not think from an X's and O's standpoint they were well coached in that game. That's not to say they're not well coached over the course of the season, but at times there are, with the Colts, there are rolls of the dice on the side of aggression that I think get too aggressive and too cute, and I thought it happened to the Colts.
Yeah, too cute, I think I would agree with. Too aggressive, for me, I am all in on being aggressive. I think it's the right approach to take. I'd rather go down.
Is that the wrestler in you?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
And a fighter, a scrapper.
Okay.
You want to test that sometime? We can if you want to.
I think I have a slight reach advantage.
The result's going to be poor for you. I'll
Okay.
just tell you that to begin with here. No, I think erring on the side of aggression is a good thing. That doesn't mean to just go crazy and be reckless, because there's a thin line between being aggressive and reckless, as we've seen at times. But I think what's so fascinating about the weekend, Jake, is that you saw both ends of the spectrum. You saw Frank Reich go for it on that 4th and goal, which people had a problem with in the first half, or go for the 2-point conversion, right? The old go for the 2 twice when you're down 14 thing. And then you saw the other end where Mike Vrabel And more importantly, I think, which really, really hurt them, Mike Tomlin punting from midfield was indefensible to do that.
Especially when Pittsburgh was
situation.
down, 2 or 3 scores at that point. I mean, look, you got to get.
You had them on your heels.
You're right.
You had them on their heels. I mean, it's not just. Let me just say this: there is no situation where punting on 4th and 1 at the opponent's 40-yard line is the right decision. It's the wrong decision. It just is. It doesn't even matter if you pin them back and you get a safety. That still doesn't make it the right decision. You should always go for it on 4th and 1 from the opponent's 40. And both Vrabel and Tomlin was a little bit farther back, but given the context of the game, should have gone for it as well. So I would rather lose like the Colts loss than lose like the Steelers or the Titans loss.
Yeah, I just, there were some questionable, I thought, play calls.
I agree with that, yeah.
Also, and we've seen this a lot, the Colts, to me, it's fairly fascinating because you have 2 totally different backs. We've talked a lot about it on this show over the course of the year. Between Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines, 2 completely different backs. But, I know that the Colts needed chunk yardage to an extent, but they kind of got away from Jonathan Taylor, and now you're going to Hines, who does have big play capability, but I thought that they were getting away from a guy that was really becoming a nice bread and butter for them late in the year in Taylor.
Yeah, I think what it really was the first half, Buffalo was selling out for that, and they couldn't run. And then you started to make some progress, and then Hines broke the big one in the second half. You started to see some progress with the run game late. So I didn't really have a problem necessarily with the personnel. You mentioned the play call. To me, the call that really sunk the Colts and was a game-changing mistake, the toss play on 3rd and goal from the 1, somebody's going to have to explain it to me again. I never understand why teams toss in short yardage. All I need is a yard. Why am I throwing the ball backwards 3 or 4 yards to get the yard, to get ahead of steam?
Right.
Like, it just doesn't make any logical sense to me. And I thought that play call, too cute. You're right, but I just thought it was stupid. It didn't make any sense to me to toss in that situation. Like, I get people want them to just run up the middle with Taylor 4 times, but running up the middle with Taylor 4 times is much better than tossing on 3rd and goal at the 1. And it's hard for me, Jake, because I say, aggression and all of that. When they lost yards on 3rd down, I'm not going to lie to you. I thought to myself, too, oh, God, maybe they should just cut their losses and kick the field goal here. The 4th down play call, I had no problem with. That had a real chance of being successful. Now, Rivers was pressured and then had to throw it up, but he just missed, I believe it was Pittman, right, in the end zone, right, just over his outstretched hands. I mean, that had a chance to being successful, but just in general, that sequence, it was a game-changing sequence. If the Colts are up 17-7 there, I think it changes the entire complexion of that game. Okay,
let's talk about some of the positives moving forward. You mentioned Pittman, who I thought really started to emerge himself, late in the year and showed the flashes. I mean, this guy's going to be a good player for the Colts.
Yeah, I agree.
Jonathan Taylor obviously came into his own. They have some nice pieces defensively, but let's look at who may not be here a year from now. And the first question begins with the quarterback position. Derek, I believe if Phillip Rivers wants to come back, we know he is going to have the opportunity to play here next year if he so chooses. Question is whether or not Phillip Rivers decides to do that. I have a feeling. I think Phillip Rivers is the quarterback of the Colts next year. You tell me I'm wrong.
No, that's clearly the odds-on favorite. For those of you spazoids out there who are all into FanDuel and DraftKings, I would put the betting line on Rivers being a Colt next year at minus 500. So you have to bet 500 to win 100. Like, I really do think that it's really good odds that he comes back because it's the most comfortable thing. He already has built a rapport with Reich, and assuming Nick Sirianni returns and the personnel.
Whoever you bring back, whoever you have, is probably not your long-term 10-year quarterback. Sure, you can go out and try to get Carson Wentz and his huge price tag, or Sam Darnold, assuming the Jets decide to move on, and that remains to be seen because they don't have the number 1 pick. Do they feel that Justin Fields is their guy over Darnold? Who knows? Matthew Stafford. All of those pieces, Derek, come with some cost. Jacob Eason is on the roster, but yet if he was ready to go, one thinks that he would have seen some snaps this year just to evaluate.
Never talked about him like that.
Correct.
He was a future franchise quarterback.
Correct. So, to me, Rivers is a really nice steadying piece that allows you to continue to assess elsewhere where you want to go. I just don't know that they're ready to make the move right now to, okay, we're all in, so let's go and get Darnold or Wentz or whatever it may be. I think they still want to wade through those waters.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is that if you're not all in on Darnold or Wentz, you can't bring them in.
Correct.
You have to be all in that this is your guy because Darnold is 24 and Wentz, I think, is 27 or 28 years old.
Well, the difference between those two, we have seen Carson Wentz have a lot of success with Frank Reich, obviously, but it was in Carson Wentz's rookie year. Mm-hmm. And Carson Wentz has regressed with pieces around him that should have prohibited his regression. Darnold, on the other hand, you have less known commodity in him because you haven't seen, if there is stability or really good play within Sam Darnold, you have yet to see it. But in his defense, Derek, he has not been given fair evaluation with pieces around him.
Yeah.
So, there's give and take with both those two guys. I don't personally think, and I may be proven completely wrong, I don't think either one of them is a real solid possibility for here.
No, me neither. Don't. And I think you're going to have to give up a lot, particularly to get Darnold. Philadelphia is just going to be looking to unload Wentz on anybody.
Correct.
But with Darnold, I think you're going to have to be talking some high-end draft picks because somebody's going to be convinced that he's their guy and a change of scenery is going to hit, like Ryan Tannehill or some of these other cases that we've seen over the years. But, we haven't talked about some of the other veteran quarterbacks that could be available. Dak Prescott will be a free agent. Matthew Stafford likely is there for the taking if you want to hop aboard that. Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think, is available every offseason.
Ryan Fitzpatrick
if you want
Fitzmagic. Is a guy, I'll be honest, though. Ryan Fitzpatrick's a guy, everywhere he goes, he puts up big numbers, right? He's like Jeff Garcia. I mean, everywhere he goes, you're like, hey, he's a nice player.
Do you remember there was a pitcher who played for 100 years named Jamie Moyer?
Yeah.
You remember him?
Yeah, he was a Cub at one point.
His stuff, his fastball topped out, I think, at like 42 miles an hour, right? But he just kind of plodded along
right.
and somehow would get the job done and would go like 12-10 every year, but he was fine, right? He's a perfectly capable, like, number 3 starter. And that, to me, is kind of what Fitzpatrick has been. So, look, I don't think there's any chance you'd bring back Rivers before you sign Fitzpatrick to a 1-year deal. It just wouldn't make any sense. But there are a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be either we know are going to be available or who are there for the taking that are going to be out there. This is going to be another, kind of like last year, a really fascinating quarterback offseason.
Derek, when you look at, again, it all comes down to, and this is, look at Bill Polian when Peyton Manning was drafted, okay? So you have Peyton Manning, and everybody just assumes, like, he was inheriting Marshall Faulk. They jettison Marshall Faulk off, and it's like, wait a minute, you have an all-pro running back, and you're getting rid of him with this all-pro level expected to be quarterback coming in Peyton Manning? Well, you wanted to coincide their primes, right? When you right now have a young receiver in Pittman, you have a young running back in Taylor, Chris Ballard is going to want to eventually get himself the quarterback that is going to go through the process and enter prime with them. And so is Matthew Stafford a guy that, do you really want to get Matthew Stafford's twilight when it's coming at the peak of his 2 biggest offensive weapons around him and his offensive linemen? That's where Darnold maybe is favorable, but because he's younger. But again, there are too many uncertainties there.
Yeah, and what I worry about, kind of getting back to Rivers, what I worry about with Rivers is that he's just going to fall off a cliff one day. He's just going to be done.
Right.
There's not this like gentle progression into like, okay, I'm ready to
Kerry Collins.
Yeah, I'm ready to now retire. It's just
right.
you once you're done, you're Peyton Manning.
Kerry Collins.
Once Peyton Manning was done, he was done.
Right.
Like he was an MVP and then he was cooked. and
right.
It was over. And I think the same thing is that's the risk that you run with Rivers is the fact that it's great that the Colts got what they got out of him this year. I think
he had a heck of a year.
Yeah, it surpassed most expectations, at least realistic ones. But next year, at any moment, it just could be completely over.
Well, the thing about him, though, I think that where he gets benefit of the doubt there, Derek, is Phillip Rivers does seem to be the kind of guy that when that happens, he's not going to be a problem for you. There are certain quarterbacks that once the drop-off happens and you decide to move on from it, quite frankly, they just become a locker room disaster and they're causing problems and they're a diva and they don't want to give up the reins. Rivers,
he knows he's in the twilight.
Correct.
He's not trying to.
And I think he's a
desperately
very
hold on.
good locker room guy. I think he's a good guy.
And he's accurate. Even when the physical limitations creep in, your accuracy doesn't always leave. So I think with Manning, even when he had that noodle arm and the physical limitations he had in that final year. Well, in that last year, Jake, I mean, he had no zip on the ball.
Right.
It's actually amazing. The Broncos had an all-world defense. It's amazing that Manning was able to kind of
Well, he was pretty smart.
drive the car. Well, that too, and Rivers is as well. So,
Right.
Rivers is a little more is aggressive the right word? But he takes risks a lot more with his
He's
throws.
a gunslinger. He's
Yeah,
got a little bravado about
that's
him.
where I think you concern yourself. But I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about all these quarterback options, and very, very likely. I would be surprised if we don't enter 2021 with Phillip Rivers.
Guys that will not be here next year, Derek. I am, and I have nothing to base this on other than just kind of reading the tea leaves, but I am at this point prepared to say that I don't think Anthony Castonzo comes back.
Yeah,
I think this is it.
I do think that we'll see how he rehabs. He has 1 year left on his deal, and to me, I always thought this last contract was the last contract. So he said to himself, I'm going to do 2 years, and that's it.
Understood. But look at how long it took Anthony Castonzo, rightly so, and I love Anthony Castonzo, both as a player and as a guy, great guy. Look how long it took Anthony Castonzo to think through and accept one last 2-year deal. He was contemplating retiring this time a year ago. He decides to come back on a 2-year deal. At the end of year 1 of that 2-year deal, he has an injury in the ankle that requires surgery, rehab, waiting. I just think there's the possibility he's going to say, I'm good.
No, I'm not writing it off. And look, I haven't talked to Tony in a while. But yeah, Anthony Castonzo.
Yeah, okay.
Personal friend of ours.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure how
he
many
is a friend of the
people
show.
knew that. Yeah, but I haven't texted back and forth with Tony in a long time. But when you take a 2-year deal, my assumption is that he was going to see it as, okay, these are my last 2 years as a professional football player. And I think he's going to do everything to fulfill that contract. What I was so impressed with him, 2011 was the first year of Corey and Schultz. I'll tell you just a really quick story here. We had a show that was a total disaster called The Blue Review. That was a 2-hour. Who books a 2-hour player show on their only off
Well,
day?
apparently you did.
Right? No, this was before. We were hired in August, and then they were like, here, you're doing this show.
Yeah, you're right.
And they put it in Anderson, whereas everybody else lives on the northwest side of town, basically, or Carmel. And it's all the way in Anderson. It's 2 hours. So it was hard to book guests to begin with. It became exponentially more harder when the Colts started 0-6,
redundant.
0-8.
Exponentially harder.
Sorry, 0-8. I was trying to sound smart. 0-10, 0-12, and I think they started 0-13, right, that year.
I think that's right.
But Anthony Castonzo was a rookie, and he was a guy that said, yeah, I'll do this. I was in touch a lot of times with either the players directly or their agents. With Anthony, I was in touch with a financial planner, and like he had a whole team already assembled, and he was very smart about, okay, how much is this going to pay me, and all of that. And I was impressed even as a rookie of how much of a handle that he had on it. And he's always been kind of a cerebral guy. He's a dude's dude. Like he's just a regular dude.
He definitely thought of, as we talked to him early in his career, about becoming a left tackle and becoming, that protecting the blind side and those things. I remember him always talking about it in geometric terms and mathematical terms, and you know what I mean? I mean, he was very cerebral about his craft.
Like part of the reason that he didn't pop as a prospect until way late in his high school career. In fact, he had to go to prep school before teams seriously looked at him. But part of the reason that he told us, I think I remember this right, that the biggest reason for going to BC was he felt like that was an academic advantage over, I think Colorado might have been the other school that he was choosing over, and he felt like he wanted
Boston
to go
College,
yeah,
right.
he wanted to go to BC because of that. So, look, long story short, I think Castonzo's going to do everything in his power to play one final season, but I've always approached this as 2021 being Castonzo's final year, but I'm not writing anything off as far as retirement.
Other players that either they need to move on from or that you think they themselves may move along?
I think you got whatever you were going to get out of Justin Houston. And that ended up being a nice deal for the Colts. He was great last year, and he was fine this year.
He's probably at the edge of the cliff,
right?
I
I think it's time to kind of cut bait on that. I'm fascinated to see what they do with T.Y. Hilton, because if the numbers are right, I think you bring Hilton back. But I just have a sneaking suspicion that his number is not going to be in line with the Colts number.
Well, you've got to wonder if there's not a team out there that might overpay for T.Y. Hilton. Maybe a team
wide receivers get overpaid all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
In addition to that, a team like, for example, and I'm just going to throw this out there, like a Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
So Jacksonville, if they're saying, look, we're going to bring in Trevor Lawrence here and we need a weapon right away for him to go to, that's a veteran that could let's go out and get ourselves a veteran receiver that has 2 years left. Like the Colts, for example, when Peyton Manning was a rookie, and they went out and they get Torrance Small, you know what I mean, who wasn't a great player, but he was a veteran receiver. You know, obviously you had Marvin Harrison there as well. But to kind of tootle along, you know, is there somebody that's going to overpay Hilton? And does Chris Ballard have a firm cap? This is what I'm going to pay for Hilton, and I'm not going to go over that.
Yeah, and I think he does. I think he has that with everybody.
The question is, does somebody else come and overpay
and you
that?
just look at wide receiver, and the Colts have just been they've been trying to figure. It reminds me of Bill Pullian in the later years with the offensive line, where they keep trying over and over to address the offensive line, and it's Mike Pollock and Tony Hugo and you know, and then into Hugh Thornton and you know, the Grigson era, and they couldn't figure it out. And with wide receiver, it's kind of been the same thing, where this has been a need for the Colts forever, and they keep needing Zach Pascal and Dontrell Inman and Ashton Doolin to come in and save the day, for Marcus Johnson for a little bit to save the day. So I think he's worth bringing back because of that. The other position where free agency is a big question mark is secondary, because Xavier Rhodes was on a one-year deal. TJ Carey, who performed well for them this year, I don't think they're going to – Malik Hooker, the writing's been on the wall for a while that he's gone. But George Odom is a free agent as well, who's been a key player for them.
And I'll tell you who I think has shown that he might be a guy that's a piece that you can go with for a while. And that's a guy that was a late-round draft pick that I thought showed himself well in moments, in Isaiah Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think he's, you know.
Sure. But I thought you were going to say Anthony Walker, because I thought you were going to mention a late-round free agent.
Well, you know, defensive backs, getting back to Rodgers, I've said this forever. Defensive backs in the NFL are like cell phone chargers and sunglasses. You can never have too many. They get broken. They're fairly easy to replace, but some of them you replace them and they last for 3 months. Some of them you replace them and they last for 3 years. Those two things, you can't have enough defensive backs. But the saving grace of that, Derek, is you can get guys off the beach, bring them in, and they can give you some minutes. You don't necessarily have – it's great to have a guy that you drafted that's a long-term guy that's going to be with you for a long time, but that is, to use your favorite term, a fairly fungible position. Cornerback, safety, a little bit different. I like Xavier Rhodes. I would bring him back. Malik Hooker, I agree with you. I don't think there's any
Corner's another one, though, where the Colts have tried and failed. Quincy Wilson, everybody was expecting this to be a breakout year for Rocky Yassin, and ugh.
Right.
You know, it's
been
a real struggle for him.
But the difference being, to the other side of that, to my point is yes, you are correct that maybe it's not one that you invest a lot in to get guys in. But if you do that and it doesn't work out, you can find guys on the beach. You got to stockpile them. So when you have one that works, you go ahead and you stick with it.
I think Rhodes is going to be looking for a long-term deal and a payday, because I think this was a chance for him to resurrect his career, and he did it. And he did.
Correct.
You know what I mean? He bet on himself, and I think he's going to want to cash in those chips now.
I believe that the AFC Championship game, so Indianapolis goes, they lose to Buffalo. Josh Allen looks like he's a really good player, and you know it was. I was happy for Bills fans who have waited a long time. I think they lose to Baltimore. I think the AFC title game is going to be Baltimore and the Kansas City Chiefs.
I've been saying it on Twitter that I think the team that we're not talking about is Baltimore.
Correct.
And people are saying, look, they're not playing anybody, which was true. The end of the season.
But Lamar Jackson's getting healthy.
They were crushing teams, though.
I agree.
They were crushing teams. And to limit the Titans, I don't know what the final total was. Would they have, like 60 yards rushing?
Well, Derrick Henry had 40, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and like 3 yards a carry or whatever it was. It was insane.
And it might be the power of branding. But you watch Baltimore and you think to yourself, here we go, typical Baltimore defense. Is it
tough, right? Physical and punch you in the mouth. And I think the beauty of Jackson is that even though he still has limitations as a thrower, he's so dynamic as a runner that it just adds that extra wrinkle to the offense. And this is what we're talking about. You know, once the Colts move on with Rivers, I think we're seeing it already take place, where mobility is such a big asset now for the quarterback. It's because it bails your offense out. If you can't run, or you can't throw, you always have the threat of that quarterback making a play on his own, and it just changes games. And there are guys like Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson who can really do that, and even quarterbacks who can still move. Like, Aaron Rodgers can move. He's not a statue. And I think that's what the Colts have to look for the next QB1.
One thing that I thought about in the playoffs, talked about this a lot, and I'm not going to go back to the point of when the Colts were looking for a new stadium and Bill Polian made the comment that – I've mentioned Bill Polian like 5 times today, but made the comment that you just don't understand how hard it is at a middle market in the NFL. Come on, man. It's the biggest hoodwink line ever. Look at – I thought it was fascinating. Who are the smallest markets in the NFL?
Yeah, New Orleans.
Outside
Green
of Jacksonville.
Bay. Yeah.
Okay.
New Orleans, Green Bay, Buffalo have to be up there, right?
You look at the playoffs. Look at the top 10 big market teams in the NFL. New York Jets, vacation. New York Giants, vacation. Chicago Bears, granted got in the playoffs, vacation.
Rams are still alive.
The Rams and
Chargers
Washington.
aren't.
Los Angeles Chargers, not in it.
Yep.
Houston Texans, not in
Philly.
it. Philadelphia Eagles, not in it.
Falcons.
Atlanta Falcons, not in it.
Are those all the top 10? Do we hit them all?
Seattle's close.
Yeah.
San Francisco 49ers,
There's
not
another
in it. Now, what are the smaller market teams? Jacksonville, terrible, no question. But Kansas City, Buffalo, Green Bay.
Indy in the playoffs.
Indianapolis. Look, revenue share, salary cap, totally even field. It is literally, and that's why people love the NFL, it is literally how well do you put the Lego pieces together, period.
Yeah.
And so franchises with stability and smart people, going to be right there. Franchises with ineptitude, Houston Texans, no.
And I just like this, too, because it feels, and this isn't just an anti-Patriots thing, but having them out of the picture.
Another big market.
It really does just freshen up this playoff field, doesn't it? Because every single year the Patriots were in the divisional because every single year they had the bye.
My buddy Nick Yeoman pointed this out, which is one of those weird anecdotal things that I appreciated. We now know, based on the playoff teams that are remaining, that it is impossible to have 2 teams in the Super Bowl that have played each other in the Super Bowl before. It's impossible now to have a Super Bowl rematch.
Wow.
Well, the only teams in the playoffs that have been to a Super Bowl remaining, Rams, right?
Yeah. Saints,
Packers,
Buccaneers,
Bucks, but the teams that each of them played, not in it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm
now,
fascinated to see.
I take that back. Not impossible. There is one possible matchup: Kansas City and Green Bay. That's it. Kansas City and Green Bay have played in the Super Bowl against one another. That's the only possible Super Bowl rematch we could see.
Oh, was that like Super Bowl 4?
1 and 2, right? Or just
really?
one?
Oh, okay, just one. Okay. Was that Len Dawson smoking a lung dart
in
the locker room?
Yeah. One of the great.
With a Fresca?
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It was a Fresca.
Yeah.
That's right. What else do we have to get to here?
We got a ton to get to.
We got a busy day.
Not only more on the Colts loss and Frank Reich and just kind of the bird's eye view, I guess, of the Colts here moving
bird's eye
forward.
right here. Like Sage.
Yeah,
the owl
that
from
actually,
WGU Indiana.
That actually creeps me out a little bit.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Here,
Sage is beautiful.
Let me block his eye.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Derek, the
Creeps
point
me out a
here,
little bit.
owls are basically.
I don't want to block the WGU.
Owls are nocturnal, and WGU ambition never rests. They're like owls. They're always honed in. Wise like an owl, too. If you're wise, WGU Indiana is the place to be.
We've got more NFL to get into. Also, Big Hoops Week. Pacers embarking on a Western road swing, and Indiana and Purdue renewing their rivalry.
That's right.
Coming up here, we're taping right now on Monday, but coming up here in a few days. Well, I want to let people know that.
So in case they're watching it.
Transparency is really important to me, Jake.
Fair enough.
I don't want to just lie like the fake news media.
Okay.
I want to lie like them.
All right. Well,
we'll get that in post. We'll edit that.
On post?
In post.
Okay. So what do we get to next?
We're going to get to sports.
More on the fake news media, is that right?
No insurrections or anything on this show.
That's good. We're not storming anything.
It's Query and Schultz back with more next. ISC Sports Network.
Dairy farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
The drive, the take, fouled, and it goes!
Lobbing it to the back of the end zone. They're going to say it's a touchdown.
Left foot gets through. Goal for Vargas. Hamilton will score!
Rolling along on this edition of Query and Schultz. I think this is episode 18, so Peyton Manning's number.
Okay.
I think it's 18. I'll have to go back.
Well, if not, then it's 19,
it
which
is.
Johnny
Okay.
Unitas's.
Jordan's giving me the
Or it's
thumbs up.
17, which was Phillip Rivers.
I'm not doing Johnny Unitas. Johnny Unitas is Baltimore. He's a Ravens quarterback.
Okay.
You know how I feel about that.
All right.
You also know how I feel about hot, delicious coffee.
That's right.
And that's why I wanted to thank Wood Warbler Coffee for being the sponsor of this segment. WoodWarblerCoffee.com. Logo's right behind us. They are certified as bird-friendly. Only a small handful of coffee roasters across the country
That's right.
have that distinction from the Smithsonian.
Which is really important to Jeff Canada, the owner and
for
operator,
sure,
right?
and a friend of ours as well, longtime friend of yours
That's right.
from way
Known
back
him a
in
long
the-
time.
Whatever, Steinmeier, Eastbrook, Eastwood.
Eastwood,
Okay, yeah, I knew it was East something. These North Central guys, all the same. You can get a hot cup of Schultz, or if you want to buy in bulk, get a hot sack. That's 3 hot bags.
Okay.
At woodwarblercoffee.com. Also, they have the Birdsong Blend, Indy 11 coffee, many, many delicious blends that Jeff makes up in Noblesville. We talk a lot about supporting local restaurants. It's also important to support local coffee, especially with the pandemic and still kind of feeling the after effects. Well, I shouldn't even say after effects, the current effects of that. And you can do so at woodwarblercoffee.com.
Wood Warbler,
Sorry,
W-A-R-B-L-E-R.
it's a little bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, woodwarblercoffee.com. Okay, so what else do we have to get to here? What would you like to do?
I didn't know
the
if
board is yours.
I didn't know if you wanted to spend just I know we spent like 30 minutes just then on the Colts, just kind of one last view and one last kind of send-off on this Colts season, and even Reich as well, who I feel like in some circles is under fire from Colts fans.
I think Frank Reich is – I think you always want to have stability in the NFL. You know, if you look at the franchises that are the best year in and year out, you know, the real win is when you can get a coach that is there for multiple, like, player tenures, and there just becomes a stability. Mike Tomlin has it in Pittsburgh, which – you know, I don't know if maybe
might be time for them.
Mike
to
Tomlin
make
in the
a
last
change.
10 years has won 3 playoff games. Yeah. He's 8-8 overall in the postseason. You know, but again, the stability that's been provided for the most part over the course of his career in Pittsburgh is something that I think you aspire towards. And maybe the Colts have that in Frank Reich, but Frank Reich still as a head coach, I think is maturing on the job. And while I understand that part of his calling card was his offensive push all in at all times, you know, just little things like when to challenge, when not to challenge.
Yeah, he's not great at that.
Really questionable challenge in that Buffalo game. That's not necessarily all on him. When to go for it, when to punt, things like that. I do think that he is the guy, though, because I think players respect him and like him. I think he offers something that, you know, just a grace about him and a leadership quality about him that's admirable. So he gets, you know, a few more years here to show why he shouldn't be in that position. So I don't necessarily look at the coaching spot as one that is in question. But the other things that we talked about, who's going to be your quarterback? I still say Phillip Rivers. I say you go one more year with it.
Yeah, me too. I think this is just how I feel coming off of this season. I thought this was a good season. I really do. I thought the Colts played a high-level brand of football for the most part. They were entertaining. It was far better than what we saw in the 2017 and 2019 seasons. I'm confident, not 100% confident, but I am more confident than not that the Colts have the right brain trust. And by that, I mean, first off, you don't change your owner unless they sell, right? Jim Irsay wants to win. He's out there. He's kind of a weirdo, right? but his number one priority is winning, and not all sports owners, I mean, look at baseball, are like that.
Right.
Chris Ballard, I think the track record speaks for itself. I would give him a strong B for his tenure so far. I think it's been very good. Like, I don't think he's the second coming, like some people want to, wash his feet when he comes into their house. I don't like feet in general. That was a biblical reference. Sorry, we'll get that in post. But I think Ballard, let me reset.
You realize post is now becoming longer than the show.
Well, Jordan's really a whiz with editing and all of that.
Okay.
So, yeah. I think Ballard's done a nice job, and I think Reich is part of that as well. I think the philosophy is right, Jake. I just think sometimes he overthinks it. And
that's a good way of saying it.
Play calls, I think, leave a lot
Too
to be
cute,
desired.
right?
Yeah, sometimes. But I think the actual philosophy is the correct philosophy in today's modern NFL. These concepts, like going for two twice, they're scary because they fight against decades of conventional football wisdom. Because you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, you're down 8. You kick the extra point to go down 7, right? And then you start, doing the numbers in your head and failing a 2-point conversion twice in a row, has around like a 25% chance. So it starts to make sense once you start to kind of do the math in your head.
You're into those analytics.
I'm not all the way, like always analytics, like look in a binder for every decision, but I do think that should weigh heavily into I'm a big probabilities guy, and I think that should weigh heavily into your decision making.
Okay, probabilities then. Tell me this. We have talked about, and a matter of fact, we were doing the show when we learned that the NCAA tournament was going to be taking place exclusively in Indianapolis. What are the odds that that's going to be taking place without a team from Indiana in it?
I think really low. I would be really surprised, Jake, if both Indiana and Purdue missed the NCAA tournament. This is hard, especially for IU fans, to grasp because of how they've played in recent years. It's not difficult to make the NCAA tournament.
Agreed.
All you have to really be is like kind of a better than mediocre team to make the NCAA tournament. You can be 8-10 in your league,
but
and make
Indiana
the
right now is a slightly better than mediocre team.
They're playing. The Big Ten's great, but if we were to list some of the second-tier teams in the Big Ten or second-half teams, I think clearly Maryland, Penn State, and definitely Nebraska would fall into that mix.
Right.
And those are 3 of their last 4 wins. They had that game in Wisconsin. They really did.
They did.
And, give Wisconsin credit. I thought the officiating was poor, but you always run into that. The worst officiated game I ever saw in my life was IU-Wisconsin in 2005, where one of the few times I thought to myself, okay, something is up with this game. I don't know if anybody remembers that game. It was my senior year at Indiana, so maybe I'm misremembering some things. But there were some calls in that game that I thought somebody's on the take here. And I don't think somebody was on the take in the IU-Wisconsin game. Don't get me wrong, but I thought Indiana got a tough whistle. But that said, that's the kind of win, Jake, that they need to secure a place in the tournament, because when those opportunities come, you have to take them because this league is a meat grinder.
It is. Can I present to you one of my queryisms that keeps me up at night?
Sure.
Regarding the NCAA tournament. I love the fact that the NCAA tournament and that the NCAA, which is based here in Indianapolis, has made this announcement that Indianapolis is going to be the host. I love the fact that they're making chicken salad out of the proverbial chicken mess with the pandemic and, March Madness after a year ago not having it. I love all of it. And I like the fact that it's going to be a real shot in the arm for the hotel industries of downtown Indianapolis. A couple of the hotels in downtown Indianapolis are serving as winter contingency for homeless shelters because there are so few people because of the lack of conventions and everything else taking place. However, the notion that this is a $100 million economic boom to the city of Indianapolis, that part I'm not so sure about, Derek. That sounds to me like a bill of goods. Look, you have 68 teams that are going to need hotel rooms, right? That's a lot of hotel rooms. And I would assume that it's going to be the Marriott properties that are doing this. The JW Marriott, that cluster, and then perhaps the downtown Marriott. Those are the hotels that are going to be getting the rights, I believe, to host all of these teams. But let's not forget, once the tournament begins, after the first 2 days, you're now down half. Half of those teams are leaving, okay? I would assume that there are a handful. The teams are going to, for the most part, have to be in a bubble, which means you're going to have a limited number of restaurants that, okay, these are the restaurants where teams can go in, or those restaurants are catering meals for the teams in the hotel. You don't have fans, or at least we don't know that officially, but it looks like it would be limited fans at best. So how many people really are coming into Indianapolis to pack the bars and the restaurants? Let's not go with conventional numbers here. This is not your dad's NCAA tournament. It's a unique situation. It's making the best out of a very bad situation, and I'm appreciative of that, and I'm grateful for it that it was Indianapolis that was chosen. But $100 million, which I've seen that number thrown around, this is not a group of fans from Arizona, Nebraska, Wisconsin, and Gonzaga that are loading up and buying plane tickets and coming to Indianapolis and booking hotel rooms and going to Cafe Patachu and Ruth Chris and Acapulco Joe's. It's not the case.
Different circumstances.
Totally.
And I think even if it's just tens of millions of dollars, you'll take it because it's
of
better
course.
than zeros of millions of dollars.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Is simply my point.
I hear you. These numbers that get thrown out for all this stuff like, hey, the economic impact on Butler University, of Butler being in Final Fours is $10 billion. You could attach any number. There's no way really of knowing. Certainly it was significant, but there's no way of knowing what the actual impact of that was.
It's certainly – maybe in futuristic numbers it helps Indianapolis because Indianapolis is going to get a ton of aerial shots and beauty shots of downtown and people wanting to come. And, so maybe the free advertising in Indianapolis, if that factors in, okay, then maybe that number is a little more realistic. But in terms of the immediate economic dollars spent downtown impact, let's not get too excited.
While we're on the college hoops topic, let's discuss Purdue as well. They had a really nice win in East Lansing over Michigan State. Travion Williams with a game-winning shot.
Williams and that was a nice shot, by the way. Travion Williams is clearly becoming, and this always happens with Purdue, somebody late down the stretch, as you take a look here at Travion Williams, guys that down the course of the year, Matt Painter's teams really figure out who is their guy. And I think we know for this team that is their guy, right?
Oh, yeah, unquestionably. And I really just feel like this is a team that is going to continue to get better because they're so young for the most part. Travion Williams is one of the upperclassmen leaders of this group, which is weird because I still think we think of him as, hey, there's that big kid that's the freshman, and he might be good someday from 2 years ago. You know what I mean? On a veteran-laden Purdue team. So this is a group that I think is going to continue to grow together and evolve. And look, I think Purdue's ceiling is probably pretty low. I think even Purdue fans would admit that this year. But making the NCAA tournament and then whatever happens there is gravy. Finishing in the top half of the Big Ten, I think all of those would be significant accomplishments for this group because this is really a transition year for them. They're building to the next chapter, and I think even next year where you think this team can be in contention.
They need stability at the guard play. Eric Hunter is a really nice player, but there's still an inconsistency.
Yeah, did
there.
that injury set him back?
Right.
Because he hasn't quite been the player that I think we thought we were going to see this year. But, I like what we've seen from some of the young players, Brandon Newman, people like that, who are going to continue to grow and only get better and getting significant minutes now as young players.
Have you seen that Disney Soul? That Soul.
We haven't watched it yet. No,
it's getting a lot of high reviews. When you were a kid, did you watch? Like I remember all of the Disney movies being the animated ones being at the movie theater. So we would go when I was a kid. I saw like Pinocchio in the movie theater. Granted they were 40 years old at that point, and Snow White, and all of those they don't do that anymore, right? Because like you have kids.
Yeah.
It's just because it's
all
all
just like a release on the stream. Like, hey, you want to watch this movie?
So which one have you?
Available.
Dumbo? Have you watched Dumbo with the kid?
Like the old cartoon Dumbo with the racist crows?
Did they have racist crows?
Yeah, they had some problematic things.
Really?
In
so
Disney.
did Song of the South, I think, right?
Yeah, is that Zippity Doodah?
That is Zippity Doodah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry, is that bad?
Jungle Book? Did you like Jungle Book?
We'll get that in post. If
the
that's
Bare
bad.
Necessities?
Yeah, Bare Necessities is great. Yeah. Baloo.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Which of the Bed Knobs and Broomsticks? Did you ever watch that?
I did watch Bed Knobs and Broomsticks.
Pete's Dragon? Did you enjoy Pete's Dragon?
Pete's Dragon was my mom really liked that for some reason.
Really?
And I rewatched that like not too long ago, and that movie's really weird.
Well, they're all weird.
Like it's a big cartoon dragon.
Fantasia is
with Mickey
basically
Rooney.
one acid trip.
Well, yeah.
this is not.
I'm pretty sure Pete's Dragon. You kind of have to be
Dragon. Like Pete's Dragon. He's dragging off of it. Is that what you're saying?
I think that's
like it's the
kinda
Magic
what you
Dragon.
have to do. Yeah.
Okay. Mickey Rooney. I was asked to be a pallbearer for his funeral.
Yes, I'm
was
aware
the star
of that story.
I'm just telling you. Little did I know when I was sitting in the movie theater at AMC in Castleton watching Pete's Dragon or Black Stallion that I was watching the guy that I would be asked to be.
Was
a
the Gnome-mobile Disney?
What's that?
The Gnome-mobile?
Gnome-mobile?
The Gnome-mobile, driving along in the Gnome-mobile. Do you remember that movie?
I don't know.
Gnome, like Gnome.
Oh, like yourself. If you're only a red pointed hat from being a gnome.
That's not what it was.
If you were to, if your little
Disney
beard
movie?
was white and you had a little red pointed hat, you'd either be Devo or you'd be a gnome.
I'm actually kind of excited about this because we are, with the NFL playoff game being the Saints-Bears game being on Nickelodeon, I did want to touch on Nickelodeon
by
shows
the way,
by the end of the show today.
I watched some of, for those that are unfamiliar with it, Nickelodeon brokered a deal with the NFL to try to get more kids involved in football. So they did a kid broadcast of the Saints-Bears game where the end zone was called the Slime Zone, and they were talking about, players' favorite ice creams and their favorite TV shows and cartoons and stuff like that. I thought it was wonderful. I watched it, and I'm like, you know what? And I'm guilty of this myself. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, Derek, this is what I want to hear. This is refreshing. Now, a little of it will go a long way, but it was so nice to watch a game and hear them talking about what Drew Brees' favorite ice cream was, as opposed to, see, they ran the skinny post double wag.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed it too.
The graphics were great.
It was just kind of unique.
When the
and
guys
fun.
would high five and they had cartoon graphics going over it. I mean, it was fun.
I just think we're starting, especially now with the COVID stuff, I think people are starting to realize, look, this isn't life and death. Like, we don't have to take this stuff so serious. It's
I would
just
agree.
Sports.
Well,
it's at the end of the day, it's a very trivial thing.
As I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, how did it take other leagues? Why was the NFL, of course, the first to think of doing this? And why did IndyCar's been trying for years to lower the average age of its demographic, because you've got to get that coveted younger generation interested and involved. I'm like, man, here it is, right? This is the way to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was pretty fun. Yeah. Kudos to the NFL.
Next thing you know, IndyCar will be on AMC or something like that,
Kudos to the NFL for thinking outside the box.
Yeah, and they always do when it comes to stuff like that.
I like AMC.
Yeah, my mom's a big AMC fan.
AMC's an older generation, though.
For sure, like black and white movies and a lot of dancing, which always makes me uncomfortable.
What's that?
Like, they'd just be in the middle of the movie and then they just start dancing and singing.
Those are musicals, Derek.
It's just weird to me.
That's what musicals are.
Like, can you imagine, you turn on Netflix and it's like,
Did you ever see La La Land?
No, but that was nominated for a bunch of stuff, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emma
La
Stone.
La Land was the one that was supposed to win Best Picture, remember? And then they're like, wait a minute, we have the wrong card. Yeah. It's not really La La Land.
Yikes.
Instead, it's that other movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Big bummer.
Yeah.
We got our features to get to.
Okay.
Love HVAC and Love That Play. Our friends Chris and John Love and the rest of the crew, great sponsors of this show. We'll get to our Love That Play. Also, our American Dairy Association of Indiana, Winners Drink Milk, winner of the week. And
I have mine picked out. Do you have yours?
Spider Bobley. Yeah, I've got everything all set, Jake. I've prepped for every show. Hours and hours of prep. It's Query and Schultz. Back with more next. ISC Sports Network.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
At an Indiana dairy farm, long workdays stretch into more labor after sunset. A newborn calf needs watching, barn needs cleaning, tractor needs some handiwork for tomorrow's tasks. Just like in your own home, the day's chores are never done until the family beds down for the night. Dairy farmers and their families share the same dream with all of us, that what we all do is worthwhile. Bringing to market pure, safe, and healthy dairy foods is what they do, from Indiana's dairy families to ours every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
Your life is on the go. Now your viewing habits can be on the go. With the ISC Sports Network app, your team is at your fingertips. You can download years' worth of content from the ISC Sports Network library. high school, college, special events, weekly and monthly shows, wherever you find your favorite app. And you can always find out more information at iscsportsnetwork.com.
Welcome back. Query and Schultz, ISC Sports Network, alongside Jake Query. I'm Derek Schultz. Thanks so much for joining us. This portion of the show brought to you by our friends at WGU Indiana, and we have to do the owl eye thing, don't we?
That's right.
I see it over my
Sage.
shoulder. Ambition never rests with WGU Indiana. Jake, if you go to wgu.indiana.edu, you can check out all the programs that they can offer for you, and that's the best thing about online college, unlike when I went, or I guess when Jake went, 40 years ago?
That's right.
They didn't have the internet.
We didn't. That is
back
correct.
then.
Pony Express.
When you went. So you can take classes online at your convenience.
Derek,
that's the beauty of WGU Indiana.
I'm so old that when I was in school, if you wanted to do something in terms of from away from school, you had to mail it in, but it actually got there within 3 months.
That's right. Yeah, we did have
back in the
faster
day.
mail.
Yeah.
But I remember you telling me a story of were you at the library or in the Hyper, and Indiana had just set up an in-house university internet.
In the library
network.
at Indiana, they had, and in the Student Union building, you had the computers where everybody had their own internal email, and we figured out how to send an email to my buddies at Hanover to plan like a weekend together. And I mean, the email address was this long. You had to copy and paste and type it all in. And I mean, and I'll never forget my buddy Mike Hillary when we were making plans, and he was at Hanover and I was in Bloomington. And I remember him saying, like, if we can pull this off and actually coordinate this without making a phone call, it's going to be epic. And I think we actually ended up having to make phone calls.
Yeah, now it's just like done.
Totally
right.
different era.
Yeah. Get on a stack or whatever.
Your wife took advantage of WGU, right?
She did, yep. And that's the thing. She's an overnight nurse, so she needed, her schedule's a little wonky. She needed to kind of go ahead and do classes at times of her convenience, and that's the beauty of WGU Indiana. So check them out online, wgu.indiana.edu, and you can choose to ignore Sage like I do.
Sage is wonderful. We have a couple of segments to get to, though.
We do. Let's talk Pacers here real
Okay.
quick, because I did want to fit in. We kind of barely talked. You know, the Colts dominate everything, but we've barely talked about them so far. But a 6-3 start, and now embarking. Like I said, we're taping this on Monday, so technically the trip starts tonight. But by the time you're seeing this, they'll already be into it. A 5-game Western Road swing.
You know, the Pacers are playing very well. Obviously, they have their offensive system. I think they're using Miles Turner in a really. I like the way that they're using him. They're taking advantage of, you know, from a particular defensive standpoint, they're feeding off of his blocks and their transition. They're getting good. You know, Victor Oladipo is starting to – I don't know that Oladipo ever is going to be the Oladipo of what we saw pre-injury, but he's a nice piece.
He's
but
still fine.
Malcolm Brogdon's playing at a very high level, but we've seen this before from Malcolm Brogdon starting out at a very high level and then kind of tapering off a little bit. But the key to the Pacers right now is Sabonis. Domas Sabonis and his ability with you know, his double-doubles that he racks up, and he is just so good on the low block in terms of his ability to score the basketball. I really like what Indiana's doing, and it's funny, Derek, a guy that very soon is going to be on the floor for them that's very easy to have forgotten, but I like him a lot as a player. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Jeremy Lamb.
Yeah.
Just from a depth standpoint.
Just a nice,
with
solid.
Warren out.
The thing about Jeremy Lamb, that without T.J. Warren in particular, the thing about Jeremy Lamb that I like, I think it's invaluable to have a guy that can give you anywhere from, let's say, 15, 16, 17 points a game, but you don't have to orchestrate things through him to get that. He gets points that aren't necessarily by design. You know, a play breaks down, he can hit a mid-range shot for you. Very few guys in the NBA now are just mid-range specific guys. Jeremy Lamb kind of is. But if you need it, and with T.J. Warren out, now is when, for Jeremy Lamb, this is more pertinent. If you need him to be somebody that you're designing through and running plays through, he's capable of that as well. You know, we've seen when Oladipo or Brogdon's out, Lamb can be the guy that is a starting player for you that gets you that 16 to 20 at that point. But if he has to sit back and just let the offense come to him, he's okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, the two things that really have struck me the most about this year's Pacers are obviously Sabonis, like you said, is reaching a whole new level. But the thing that sticks out to me about that is he's shooting 3-pointers now. And he's making them at a fairly – we're talking about a really small sample size here. By the time we're taping this, they've only played 9 games. But he's shooting 42, 43% from 3 and attempting, I think, 2 a game, which is far more than he's ever done before because he now has the freedom to do that. So I think that's jumped out to me, just adding that wrinkle to his offensive game because it makes him that much more dangerous. But also I just think they're allowing Turner to maximize his skill set. And we've been talking so much about, well, Turner needs to be more of a banger. Turner needs to be a low block. He's not. He's not that type of – he's not Steven Adams. He's not Joel Embiid. He's never going to be those guys. Just let him be the best Miles Turner that he can be, and I think Nate Bjorkgren has done that. And I think Turner at this point, we can count blocks and all that, whatever. He's changing the way opponents attack the Pacers. And the last guy to do that for them was Roy Hibbert. And that's an invaluable skill to have that doesn't always show up in the box score. You can't just look at blocks and be like, okay, this is how Turner's changing the game. Turner changes games without it being noticeable on a piece of paper.
And he does that, Derek, without – take Roy Hibbert, for example, not to pick on Roy Hibbert, but Turner you can get that kind of play out of in terms of what you're talking about defensively without him then slowing you down offensively.
Yeah,
with
and being a liability on
Hibbert slowed you down.
But they played slow. I mean, I get it. It's a different era, so it's a tough comparison because, that was the Pacers were playing throwback basketball then, and that was, almost 10 years ago. Right. Whereas now it's a whole different brand of getting up and down in tempo and maximizing the amount of possessions that you get and all of that, and Turner does play well into that.
But the East, seemingly is wide open for a couple of factors. Number one, Milwaukee made some roster changes. Yeah, they kept Giannis, but they're still kind of wading through. They haven't gotten off to the kind of start, certainly like they had a year ago. Brooklyn, I think, is one team that – what's that?
Brooklyn.
That's right. Brooklyn is a team that on paper you look at it and you go, okay, it's going to be really tough for anybody to contend with the Nets, but Kyrie Irving's crazy, right? And he's still showing to me, you can't bench crazy.
This just feels like a 4-month open practice for the Nets. Like, I don't think they're taking this regular season seriously.
It's probably
at
true.
All. I think they're just feeling their way around. Personnel-wise, I mean, up and down the roster, it's an incredibly talented group. Right. Not just Kyrie and
is Boston.
And Durant. Yeah, so I think the East is tough. This is what I'm choosing to do, Jake. And this doesn't play well for the show. It certainly wouldn't have played well for sports radio. I'm just going to choose not to make any broad proclamations about the Pacers this early. I'm just not going to.
Doesn't do well for the show, Derek.
I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, the Pacers can contend. And blah, blah, blah. How often have we done that? Where in like December or January, we've been like, whoa.
Your body language indicates that you're being defiant.
No, this is me just, you can't see it if you're listening to the podcast, but I'm just kind of leaning back and saying, I'm putting my foot down. I have a lot more creative control. Okay. I started my own LLC, so I'm taking kind of matters into my own hands.
Who's the best
here.
team in the East?
I still think the best team is going to end up being the Nets, just because I can't ignore the bullets that they have in their gun.
I mean, that's fair. Kevin Durant, I think the best if everybody's healthy, which, in this year, I'll tell you, I like Boston. I think the world of Jason Tatum, but I think Jaylen Brown is a wonderful talent too. Those two guys together are just really good.
For sure. And I one team that I'm just deciding not to put anything behind is Philly. I just think
it would have happened by now, right?
At any bad moment, things are just going to fall apart for them. Like, to me, it's a very, very delicate situation where, yeah, look, Philly's a good team, and they've got great pieces. But it just feels like even just a little tiny breeze is going to blow that whole thing over.
Right. Joel Embiid is one that, I think the world of his talent, but
yeah.
Can you get 3 straight games?
But I guess, the overall point,
health standpoint,
and we're talking in circles, and I'm crossing my arms and all of that, so you guys are probably like, what the hell are they talking about? The overall point here is that I think the Pacers are playing better basketball than I expected. I was very apathetic about them going into this year, and clearly Nate Bjorkgren has made some changes that have benefited them, there's been some growth individually.
They're going to start allowing fans into Bankers Life Fieldhouse. I think it's going to start at like 1,500 or maybe 2,500, something like that. Initially, my understanding is that's going to be club level and above. that's not to say if you owned lower-level tickets, you can't get in. I'm saying the lower level now is going to be like the club level, so everything kind of moves up a little bit.
Yeah, they're going to block that off to keep
correct
the undesirables away from
I don't think
players
it's that.
and staff.
Just keeping it.
Well,
as
that's
a
how I
bubble.
always felt as a credential. Like, I was always like, ugh, like I don't want to touch any fans. You know what I mean?
Your
Like,
credential
ugh.
had you up in the middle,
Sometimes I walk down to get snacks.
depending on whether or not I had an open seat for you.
I miss the old days when I first started with when you were in the TV biz and with Rakestraw, who's sitting right here. He's running our cams today. Remember, right behind the basket,
Yeah, that was
you were
press
like
row.
up close and personal.
Yeah.
And like even when it was like really crappy, like Brandon Rush, TJ Ford teams, it was just awesome to be that close.
I mean,
to
it gives
watch
you an
NBA
idea how
basketball.
fast the NBA
Oh,
is,
it's
how
incredible.
big they are, the
How
length.
physical. It's amazing.
It's pretty amazing. Time to get to our Love That Play.
Yep.
I actually have one in my mind. I don't know if we have the same one.
All right, let's save that.
What's that?
We're gonna break first and then go to Love That Play, right? Or are we doing Love That Play now?
Oh, we're doing Love That Play
Okay,
now.
sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
I mean,
on
look,
the air.
Derek, when it comes to – see, Derek wants to delay Love That Play. But here's the thing, folks. When you need, like, for example, if your furnace goes out, you don't need to take a break and come back to it. You need it right then. And that's the great thing about Love Heating and Air. They've been around since 1920, so now officially over a century in Central Indiana. Love-HVAC.com or 317-353-2141. But keep in mind, 24-hour maintenance. So when you need something done, they are there for you. Of course, in addition to that, great product, knowledge of product, integrity, great guys. I've known the Loves my entire life. Would not steer you wrong. Love-HVAC.com. Each week, Love That Play, our favorite play of the weekend. I have one that is not necessarily Indianapolis related, but I thought was a significant play. But Derek, your nominee would be what?
I Love That Play is, let me make sure that I have it.
Dude, how do you not just
I
have this
remember.
locked in your mind?
Speaking of Greg, because we just mentioned it, he's the one that pointed this out to me. We had a crew, ISC Sports Network, we had a crew over on the northeast side at LN, and the last time we were at LN, Donovan McCulley had an incredible buzzer-beating three-pointer.
Future Indiana quarterback.
Yes, to end a string of incredible three-pointers in their comeback win over Fishers in overtime. LN actually fell short in overtime. Homestead ended up winning, but Jalen Smith, who is a Miss Basketball candidate, a Purdue commit, and just a tremendous player, hit a ridiculous shot. If you want to check it out, at ISC Sportsnet on Twitter. Also, our YouTube channel has it up. It's on all of our socials, Facebook,
we play it here?
Instagram, all
Can
of
we do
that.
it?
Well,
Can we
I don't
play it
want
right
to.
here?
Oh, we can? Okay. I didn't want to put Jordan. You're putting Jordan on the spot here.
Well, you're always talking about posts.
Well, he's great, and he's a magician, really.
so we
but
can
you're
so we
just
can
like,
edit it in right now so that people can see
you
the play
guys
right
don't
here,
see it,
right?
but a couple of weeks ago, Jake slammed his fist on the table during commercial break and said, "Where's my milk?" And Jordan had to come in her all
milk.
flustered, and
Not
that was just,
M-E-L-K, M-I-L-K.
that was not the proper way to
Okay,
handle that.
so from Lawrence North, this is our Love That Play of the week, right?
Here it is.
All right, here we go.
Helm throws it over the head of Smith. Smith tracks it down. Shot at the buzzer. Good! She got it! Oh my goodness, what a shot by Jayla Smith to tie this game and send it into overtime.
What a play. You want to be able to get the ball towards your rim. They did that. Jayla Smith, what a great shot off the dribble. Hits it to send this thing to overtime. Wow.
I actually was going to nominate the Cleveland Browns opening. It looked like the opening of the Super Bowl between the Seahawks and the Broncos over the head of Ben Roethlisberger, just because that got Cleveland off and running, and I know what it means to my buddy Pat Graham, Mike Kitchell, and other Browns fans I know that have waited a very long time. But I grew up a Steelers fan, so I'm glad that we opted for something else on Love That
I have
Play.
many Browns fans in my life, so they were actually
They were thrilled.
one of my picks for a different feature that we're going to do here in just a little bit.
All right, we'll do that next, right?
We're going to do that next.
Okay.
Corey and Schultz, we move right along here on ISC Sports Network. Stick around.
Indiana dairy farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
Welcome back to Query and Schultz. By the way, as Derek mentions every once in a while, we actually tape this program at the beginning of the week, and sometimes while we're taping it, we get news of something that happens kind of spontaneously, or, breaking, if you will. Sad news to report, 64-year-old Wayne Radford, who played at Arlington High School, a member of the Golden Knights, also was a key reserve on Indiana's 1976 national championship team that defeated Michigan 86-68 in the national title game. And he actually, I think he missed the layup at the end of the game that would have made it a 20-point game, but that's neither here nor there. He was on the floor for the last undefeated team in college basketball. Wayne Radford also played for the Pacers, spent his entire career actually in the state of Indiana and lived in Bloomington. But Wayne Radford has passed away at the age of 64. So Godspeed to one of Indiana basketball's truly legendary names in Wayne Radford. Derek, we do our Winners Drink Milk, brought to you by the American Dairy Association of Indiana. I don't know if you know, but today is, in talking about, we're taping this on a Monday, National Milk Day. Did you know that?
Really?
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Well, happy NMD?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, National Milk Day.
NMD is correct.
Cheers.
Chocolate milk, for example, full of, this is basically like I'm eating a handful of spinach and a banana, right?
10 cups of raw spinach, so more than a handful. A full banana, and how many eggs is it? I thought I had all of my milk facts off the top of my head. 2 hard-boiled eggs.
It's wonderful.
And every 8-ounce serving of chocolate milk. It's great for post-workouts. When I go to the JCC and throw my ish around, if you ever see me in there, stop by and say hi. Usually I'm in it, so I don't like having a lot of conversations. When I'm in it, I'm in it.
Okay.
Like military press and stuff like that. Like I don't like to be bothered.
We did the military press at cardio rehab.
Do you really?
Yeah.
It's a good workout, isn't it?
Oh yeah, they watch my heart while I'm doing it.
See, I do like real.
You know what they
stuff.
tell me at cardio rehab that's good for me?
What's that?
Milk.
Yeah, milk's great for you.
Of course.
Great nutritional value, and it's delicious. And Indy 500 winners drink it and dump it on their head as well.
That is correct. Mm-hmm. Our Winners Drink Milk, again, brought to you by the American Dairy Association of
WinnersDrinkMilk.com, by the way.
WinnersDrinkMilk.com. I'm going to go, Derek, with, and when I say this name, you're going to go, if I said the name Andrew Jones, what's the first thing you think of?
1996 World Series?
Correct. You think of the Atlanta Brave, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Texas Longhorn basketball player Andrew Jones. I thought about Domas Sabonis because he's gotten off to a great start in the NBA. But what Andrew Jones did for Texas, and I realized that Texas basketball, Shaka Smart and the Longhorns, is not necessarily big-time topic of conversation in Indiana unless they're playing Indiana like they did earlier this year. But Andrew Jones had a game-winning 3 for Texas over the course of the weekend, enabling the 17th-ranked Longhorns to get a win. He hit a 3 with 1.1 seconds left, 16 points in the game. I'm not even sure actually who they were playing. Kansas State, maybe? I'm not even positive. But it happened, Derek, on the 3 or 4, I think 4-year anniversary to when he was diagnosed with leukemia. So he overcame that diagnosis. He went through all of the treatments. He came back. He played for Texas, got back onto the basketball floor. That alone in itself is an inspiring enough win. But to be able to, on that anniversary, hit a game-winning 3 for a top 20 ranked team, I think is pretty cool. So Andrew Jones, you are my Winners Drink Milk, American Dairy Association of Indiana winner of the week. There we go.
And Texas is, I don't know what their exact ranking is. They're like in the
17th.
top 5.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. They beat West Virginia. They beat West Virginia,
who was ranked 17th. Okay,
sorry.
yeah, I was going to say because Texas is like on
You're
fire
right. They
right
are
now.
5th ranked. They beat 17th ranked West Virginia. My apologies.
This is a perfect Jake Queryism. The Texas basketball and Texas football situation, I don't want to get too off track here, is the perfect example of why Ohio State basketball and Texas basketball are great jobs. They were patient with Shaka Smart. If Shaka Smart was their football coach, they would have cut bait.
Good point.
You know
That's
what I
a
mean?
very good
And they were patient. And look, it took a long time. And even I was kind of like, I don't know about Shaka Smart. But clearly it's hit big for them now because they're a championship contender now.
And he's grown his hair out, and he looks totally different.
Yeah. It's a little bit.
He looks weird. He looks like he's 15 years old.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I mean, I'm always really cognizant of my brand, and so I would never like drastically change. I mean, I've gotten a little more muscular over the years, but I would never like drastically change my appearance because this is what people expect.
What part of your appearance is part of your brand?
Well, all of it. The beard, the glasses, like this little swoosh that I do with my hair where I kick it to the side a little bit. Like I've seen people have asked me, hey, how do you do that? Fiber wax, by the way. It's a real key. Okay. Just kind of wet your hand real quick and then just take a healthy bit of goop and put it up in there, and then you get a nice shine on your forehead.
Who between the two of us has better hair? We're side by side right here. Who has the better hair?
Especially considering that you're 10 years older than me, you have great hair.
Really?
Yeah, you've got basically a full head of hair, and there are a lot of people at 52 years old that don't have that.
If you look down here, you see it?
Yeah, but dude, every dude has that.
Did you say I'm 52?
Oh, 51?
48, buddy. I turned 48 in September. I'll be 49 coming up in September. I did not ever think I'd live to see 50, and lo and behold, I tried my hardest to test that.
My winner of the week, the city of Cleveland. Yes, they had a Cavs championship. A lot of them are Ohio State fans, and Ohio State football especially has been incredible. It's a Browns town. It's a Browns town by far, and it's not close.
It's beyond a Browns town, Derek. It's a Browns region.
Yeah. And for them to win their first playoff game since 94, obviously the first one since the reincarnation of the Browns in 99, and they were such a disaster for so long. I mean, it was not that long ago they were winless, and then 1-15. I mean, it was, in the last 4 or 5 years, right?
I'll eat crow here. Baker Mayfield
Incredible.
Is a player. I didn't think he was going to be a player in the league. He's a player.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced. This is the thing, Jake. You don't need to be a superstar for it to validate you. You know what I mean? Like, if Baker Mayfield is Ken Anderson, that's a really nice career.
Right.
Ken Anderson wasn't Jim Kelly or Dan Marino, but he had a really good career. And I think that's kind of where Baker is heading. I think Baker Mayfield's going to be just a really good to very good quarterback.
There are a lot of good young quarterbacks in the NFL.
And they've got a lot of talent. They've got some.
They do.
You know, the roster especially deserves credit. But Eric Edelsberg, Zach Cooper, Eric Maroon, Mark McGill, John Fanta, so many Browns fans that I know that are in my life that were celebrating, and like grown men in tears with that playoff win.
It was cool. And for them to be able to do it over Pittsburgh, you know what I mean?
For sure. It makes it that much more special.
Yeah.
And to really kind of ragdoll them the way that they did, particularly in the first quarter.
Alex Wolf, another big Browns fan that I know.
They were getting ragdolled, 28 donut to start the game. Just an absolute ragdolling. I know Pittsburgh came back a little bit.
Nobody uses these terms, Derek.
By the way, I won $50 last night because I put $10 on both the Steelers and Browns to go over 25 points, and it was plus 520. So I know you care about everybody's bets, kind of like your fantasy team, so I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
$50 richer, my man.
Okay. All right.
Break in the Biter Bowl bleep?
Sure.
Okay. Break.
Why are you asking me?
You coordinated the schedule today for some reason, which is I should never let that get out of my control.
Okay.
Biter Bowl bleep and our favorite shows on Nickelodeon to wrap up this edition of Corey and Schultz on ISC Sports Network.
Indiana dairy farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
The drive, the take, fouled, and it goes!
Lobbing it to the back of the end zone. They're going to say it's a touchdown.
Left foot gets through. Goal for Vargas. Hamilton will score.
Back for a final time. Query and Schultz, ISC Sports Network. Thanks so much for joining us today or for listening on any number of podcast platforms. So we're available, iscsportsnetwork.com, obviously. The ISC Sports Network app, ISC Sports Network on Facebook and Twitter have the live stream of the shows every Tuesday at 6 o'clock. Comcast Channel 81 locally. If you're in Indiana, you can capture us on Wednesday night starting at 6 o'clock, but also iTunes, Google Play, all of that, Spotify. And then on YouTube, we post episodes every Friday. So our YouTube archive, youtube.com/Query and Schultz.
It's time to get to Derek Ballard or Bull Schultz, right?
That's right.
All right.
It's our favorite segment that we do. You guys have come to know and love it. Here's what we do. I don't even need to say this. I don't know why I'm doing it. But I'll tell you just in case we have any newbies because we attract millions of people every day. I give a statement. Jake and I go back and forth whether we buy it or it's bull bleep.
Okay.
There you go. Statement number 1. T.Y. Hilton, we actually talked about this a little bit, should be brought back next season. Buy it or bull bleep?
I buy that for the right number. So I hate to put a caveat on it, but for the right number. Somebody out there is going to overpay for T.Y. Hilton, and the Colts need to make sure that they don't get swept up in that bidding war. But if they can get him for the right number, and I don't know what that number is, the Colts have some cap flexibility, I realize, but you can't overcommit because receivers, once they fall off pretty quickly. But T.Y. Hilton has some value, no question about it, especially if, for whatever reason, and I don't anticipate this, but if you were getting a young quarterback that needs, a veteran to kind of help him wade through. I think it's going to be Phillip Rivers next year. But, yeah, I go ahead and bring back T.Y. Hilton. No more than probably 2 years or 3.
Yeah, I was going to say 2. The years is another thing that I would – and I don't know what T.Y. is going to want. He's going to want to be paid.
Well, if Jacksonville comes and says we're going to give you 5 years and $30 million.
Yeah, then you can't you
sayonara,
say bye.
Right?
Yeah, but I think it is important to bring him back because he's become an important locker room guy. And a guy really that took a lot of undeserved criticism over the years. And I think we're now starting to realize that a lot of that criticism was, in fact, unwarranted. And he's been a highly productive player who's fought through a lot of injuries. He's tough. He comes through in the clutch a lot of times if you believe in those sort of things. I think it's important to have a guy like that in your locker room. And Jake, this wide receiver depth chart is still very much up in the air. We don't know if Paris Campbell is going to be – I think we could feel pretty confident that Michael Pittman is going to be a good to very good player.
Pittman's a nice player.
But, Paris Campbell and Zach Pascal and Ashton Doolin's a UFA. So you don't have a lot of near certain things on this wide receiver depth chart.
UFA?
Yeah, unrestricted free agent.
Okay. I thought that was undrafted free agent.
UDFA.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll print you out a sheet. I've actually got for all the acronyms.
If you could, yeah.
Just to help you because you seem to have a lot more trouble with it than most people do. Statement 2, something else that we kind of sort of alluded to. It's time for the Steelers to move on from Mike Tomlin. Buy it or bull bleep?
I actually buy that. I think Mike Tomlin's a heck of a coach, but as I mentioned, he has won 3 playoff games in the last 10 years. He's 8-8 lifetime in the postseason. This year, the Steelers started out 11-0. Kudos, Mike Tomlin, for that. They finished 1-5. It's not entirely on the coach, but the coach's job is to, corral things and stabilize it once things get rocky. A lot of question marks in Pittsburgh. Is Ben Roethlisberger back? It looked to me like Ben Roethlisberger was crying after their loss to Cleveland. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying he was very emotional about it. I don't know that I'm necessarily ready to say Pittsburgh needs to just flat out fire Mike Tomlin. But if the conversation is brought up in Pittsburgh about whether or not, hey, should we have this discussion? Yes, you should. At the very least, they should have the discussion.
I think there are times when it's just time to move on from a coach for both sides. And it's not anybody's fault. It's not with cause. It's not because Mike Tomlin can't coach. It's just like Philadelphia and Andy Reid is
Pittsburgh, of all franchises, loves that stability.
No, for sure. Philadelphia with Andy Reid is a great example where Andy Reid is a Hall of Fame level coach, right? It was just time. It just felt like they had done everything that they were going to do together, and it was time for Andy Reid to move on and succeed, which he did, and the Eagles to move on and succeed, which they did, And I think Pittsburgh is maybe kind of going into that situation here with Mike Tomlin, where it's just become time for a change. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the situation, but I believe the players have always loved Mike Tomlin. I know Trey Essex, who we did the show with, who was a Steeler for a long time, loved Mike Tomlin. He would get a job in 2 seconds.
Correct.
But, maybe that change of scenery would help both Tomlin and the franchise itself.
What's next?
Last one here. Buy it or bull bleep. The second week of January is the cutoff for Christmas lights.
Well, that's bull, Schultz, because the cutoff for Christmas lights is the first week of January.
Oh, so wow.
Look,
you're very
I
strict
understand
about
it.
this.
I know that Christmas, technically speaking, is the 12 days of Christmas. I get it. But the most depressing week of the calendar year, unequivocally, without doubt, without question, is the first week in January. January 2nd through like the 10th, whatever, that's 8 days, whatever it might be. Because all of a sudden you're coming off of New Year's Day, which is always gray and cold, and Clemson gets blown out of the building from Ohio State. I mean, it's just like, it's all. So you're coming off of that. You're coming off of the holidays. You know that you're getting ready for this stretch, whether you're a kid at school or you're at work, where, the next thing on the calendar to look forward to is like St. Patrick's Day. It's just this brutal stretch, psychologically speaking. So trying to carry on, you feel like you're just holding on. The people with the lights up, it's like this reminder of the holidays when the fastest way, it's rip off the Band-Aid, man. Rip off the Band-Aid.
Ours are always down by New Year's Day.
I think New Year's Day for most people is the day that you spend
or
taking
New Year's
stuff
Day
down.
weekend.
Right.
Like if New Year's Day is Friday, then they're down by the 3rd. The people that give me anxiety are the people that take them down at 7 a.m. on the 26th. Like, I'm not saying do that. Like, like chill. But, yeah, I don't want to see, as we know, January, most months have 30 or 31 days. January has 60.
Correct.
So, I don't want to be reminded of it. If your house is still all decked out when there's a big light up Santa and it's January 24th, I'm just like, get this out of here. I buy it. Take those down. I'll give you another week. But take them down this week.
January's rough, though, isn't it?
This is awful. It's the reason why we always plan family vacations for right after the Super Bowl. It's because it gave us something to look forward to.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
And obviously, we're not doing that this year because of the COVID stuff.
Right.
The Nickelodeon broadcast, which we discussed, let's wrap on that because I think this hits both of our wheelhouses because you kind of were from the you can't do that on television Double Dare era.
Those two.
And for me, it was more like Salute Your Shorts and then Doug and Rugrats and even into Hey Arnold where you kind of got more into the 90s. But Nickelodeon had, I think, kind of a brief run, really, when you think about it, probably 85 to 95 where it was really huge. And it hits both of us right in that age group.
Well, look, for me, what's funny about Nickelodeon is you can't do that on television, which was actually out of Canada. Alanis Morissette was on it. And that kind of was like when they first were just needing programming. And then Double Dare. Now, Double Dare really hit big when I was in the 6th grade. Mark Summers.
North Central grad.
What's his last name? It's not Berkowitz, is it?
Let me look it up because it is something like that.
It's I should know this, but at any rate, Double Dare was funny because
I was Berkowitz.
Yeah, when I was in the 6th grade, everyone was watching Double Dare, but we were kind of too old for it. Like nobody wanted to admit that we were watching it because it's probably more like 3rd or 4th grade kids. But I loved it though; it was fun. My buddy Jason Keller and Andy Burt tried out for it at the mall. I was too old; you had to be no older than 12, and my birthday had already passed. They didn't get selected. But Nickelodeon was cool. But I thought the NFL broadcast on Nickelodeon was fun, Derek. It was really fun. Yeah. It was refreshing. I'm not saying that I would enjoy it week in and week out, but I could see why kids would like it. And kudos to the NFL and Nickelodeon for partnering to try to get kids involved.
Another great show, Hey Dude, with Christine Taylor, who is now Ben Stiller's longtime wife.
Okay.
Who I always had a huge crush on.
Is she the one that looks? Hey Dude? Is she the one that played Marsha Brady?
Yes.
Yeah.
You ever watch Hey Dude?
No.
It's a little wild, a little strange. Make your home out on the range. Grab your horse and come along.
Okay.
Because you can't get a ride if you can't hold on. Come on, man. It's one of the best theme songs ever. Wow. Salute Your Shorts.
Yeah, don't know it.
Camp on Awana.
What year was Salute Your Shorts?
93.
Okay, I was 22 years 92. Old.
Well, you still should have been watching it. Still should have been watching Salute Your Shorts.
I don't even know. Nickelodeon now, what is their programming? Is it cartoons? Is it
I think a lot of it is.
SpongeBob 24 hours a day?
Well, SpongeBob is really now the epicenter of the whole Nickelodeon universe, I would think, because that's been such a hit with people from all ages, from 5-year-olds
Party Man Nick
to stoners.
Like SpongeBob.
But so many
what did you say?
Shows.
What to what?
The wide range of SpongeBob fans. Yeah.
Did you say stoners?
Just everybody and anybody likes.
Are you pretty dialed in with the?
No, I'm just saying. I think that was an element of SpongeBob. But there were like little references of that. Like the beauty of Nickelodeon cartoons was that they had not adult references like South Park and Family Guy, but like those are adult shows. But they were kid shows that kind of did like wink adult humor.
Have you not noticed, Eric? If you go back and look at Looney Tunes, first off, some of the Looney Tunes, the Bugs Bunny stuff was like, I mean, it's a little politically incorrect, but you didn't realize it as a kid. But I've seen, some of the Looney Tunes, the Bugs Bunny cartoons have like, World War II references that when you were a kid you didn't realize. You watch it now and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, really?
Yeah. I remember asking my mom, what are not bail bonds, but like what did they sell during the war, right? To wait,
bonds, right?
Yeah, and they mentioned it during the cartoon. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah,
and that was in 1986.
Yeah, Bugs Bunny was from 1948 for crying out loud, right?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. But Nickelodeon was a huge part of my life in the 90s, and my dad worked for Viacom, and so we had a lot of swag and then into like Comedy Central and MTV, and it was just a fun time. It was the last time really that something like that had that level of relevance. You know what I mean? Where it was so widespread, because now we've gotten into our culture where everything is a la carte and you just choose the niche that you like. It's not just, here it is, either you like it or you don't, like what we had as kids.
Did you know the Flintstones supposedly, I never knew this. And I don't know that this is the case, but it's like a theory out there that the Flintstones actually is from the future. Did you know that?
You think of the Jetsons.
No, the Jetsons were a spinoff of the
robot
Flintstones.
made.
But allegedly, there are people that believe that the Flintstones actually was supposed to be set. It was a futuristic world where the world had reset itself and gone back to Stone Age living, but it was actually in like the year 3000.
No, they had dinosaurs and stuff. You're thinking of the Jetsons. George Jetson.
The Jetsons
Elroy.
were a spinoff of the Flintstones that was supposed to be like in the 21st century. But that's how the Flintstones knew the Jetsons, because they were also from the future, and then they were sent in the same time travel period once to visit the Jetsons. They went back to visit the Jetsons, but they lived in a world that was even further back than that. I'm just telling you what's out there. Maybe it's from the people you're talking about that watch SpongeBob. I don't know.
With stuff like this, we're just a couple of days removed from like a 4chan message board going crazy on the U.S. Capitol. I think we should probably leave the theories that are way out there. Like, you should probably just keep some of those to yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's wackadoodle. The Flintstones is old. The Jetsons is new.
I'll leave you with this then, Derek, to wrap up this fine award-winning show for the week. You know the fellow with the bullhorns?
Yeah.
That was part of the Capitol
They
thing?
did find him and arrest him.
Right. You know what his first name is?
Is it Jake?
It is Jake. And you know the group that he's a member of?
Q?
Q.
Jake Q, huh? Yeah. This is like when
He's the QAnon Shalom or whatever, but some people call him Jake Q. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, well, this is like the Penn State situation where one of the AD or something like that was named Schultz, and the coach was McQuarrie, right?
That's right.
So then everybody, right when we started the show, that happened, and everybody was like, hey, listen to Query and Schultz. People were like, wait a minute, where have I heard those names before?
Yep.
Awkward.
Well, I don't have the bullhorns, so don't worry.
Thanks to our great sponsors, WGU Indiana, Wood Warburg Coffee, Love Heating and Cooling.
American Dairy Association
of Indiana.
That's right.
For helping us out here in 2021. Thanks so much for watching and for listening. We'll be back next week for our entire crew. Jordan, Greg, I guess I'll thank you as well. I'm Derek Schultz. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on Query and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
We're a different breed, aren't we? While others rest, we choose to work. Where others are content, we stay hungry. They may not see us coming, but we know exactly where we're going. You won't rest until you succeed. Neither will we.
You're watching Query and Schultz on the ISC Sports Network.
Indiana dairy farmers provide us with safe, pure foods for our tables. A responsibility that takes intuition, resolve, and determination to make sure their milk is good for you and delicious to taste. Their connection with our community runs deep, passed down through the generations, ensuring that milk is always available at your store. It's not easy being a dairy farmer, but the rewards have special meaning when you can feed Indiana's families every single day. Learn more at winnersdrinkmilk.com.